Unfortunately,
Okay, so I think we're beginning. Today is April Fool's Day. And even though yesterday it was beautiful and sunny and spring-like, as I look out Sarah's window, it is full on winter, which for
Yeah.
people like me, that's okay. I love winter anytime, but I know it isn't what everyone expects. If everyone is able to, please mute yourself if you're not speaking. And if you are a member or a staff member of the committee and are able, please bring your face into the circle. It's helpful to really see one another. And we're going to do, I'm going to quickly run through the agenda, even though that was supposed to be second on the agenda. I want to do that first so that people know where we're going and we can change things up. The most exciting thing is that we have a little more time today and hopefully feel a little less rushed than we have in the previous meetings. And that's unfortunately because the contractor for the public engagement process is not able yet to join us due to administrative details. But they're excited, I think, to join us and will be next week. But that's given us a little more space. So we wanted to do a nicer, a little bit more in-depth check-in to give time to really share a little bit because we want to get to know one another a little bit as we embark on this journey. Um, we're going to look at our minutes. We're going to have a few announcements. We're going to hear from Director Jane. I'm not going to say your last name, Jane. Someone asked me your last name the other day, and I'm like, I don't know. Sorry. It's not that hard. And then we're actually going to offer a new approach to a strategy to get to know one another a little more deeply, which was rather than expect everyone to say something each time that's brief, that we give each of us a moment to share a little bit more. And Nadia, whose idea this was, has offered to do a little of that. And then we are going to actually look at our work plan and take time to sort of assess where we are and where we're hoping to go to essentially start a roadmap of what we need to try to accomplish and what our expectations are. And then we'll have time for public comment. We'll start to set some goals about our next meeting and any final reflections. So that's where we're going today. I think we're recording. And I'm going to just say this for our check-in. What we're hoping to do is give every member and staff member a chance to kind of do a bit of a temperature check. How you doing? We are all still remote. We are all still deeply in COVID response and hopefully moving toward recovery. But we also are hopefully turning the corner on this unbelievable global pandemic. And it is actually going to be spring. That we know. The pandemic, not so much. So we wanted to just have a reflection of what you're looking forward to at this, as we look towards spring and hopefully toward a different phase of this COVID pandemic. Something that you're looking forward to that tells us a little bit about you. So I'm going to pick on Sarah first, and then you can choose the next person around the circle. Thanks.
sounds good. I'm sorry, I have another screen over here, and since you told me I was sharing things, I was popping them up, so that was why my head kept turning. I was getting ready. But thanks for that. And as you probably can see behind me, it's snowing a lot at my house, so I'm not feeling as springy as the other day. But I think one of the things I am looking forward to is longer walks outside. I think the cold sometimes slows me down, and I like to take a walk, so I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks. And I'm going to tag Iris.
Hi. I'm doing okay.
Remind us who you are and a
Okay.
little bit like where you live and sort of who you're representing in this journey, because we don't all know each other yet well enough. And some new members of the public might want to know.
Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm Iris Chung. I use she, her pronouns. I am one of the youth members on this subcommittee. I go to Essex High School, and I am an activist with a bunch of different organizations and things. So, yeah, and I am doing okay. I am a little more than 1 week out for my second dose of vaccine, so I'm looking forward to maybe seeing some people. So that's where I'm at.
That's exciting. Iris, do you want to tag your next person?
Yes, sorry. I'll pass it on to Abby.
Thank you, Iris. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. I just got a new work computer, and so all the audio settings were wrong for Zoom or Teams or different platforms. So I think I'm slowly getting them all settled. I work for the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and I am support staff to the Just Transitions Subcommittee, and really excited to play that role. And it fits really nicely with some of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that we're doing at the Agency of Agriculture, and that my division, the Ag Development Division, is really guiding and leading for our agency. And it's been really exciting to watch the entire agency get excited and engaged in those efforts. And also some additional projects that I'm part of a certified public managers program in state government, and we're working with the Department of Environmental Conservation on recommendations for developing an environmental justice policy and approach for DEC programs. So again, really excited about this work, impressed by this subcommittee representation, and I am looking forward to, similar to Sarah, taking longer outdoor excursions with less clothing on, just less of an ordeal to get out the door. So looking forward to that, and had a few teasing days of that last week. And I will pass it to Danielle.
Great, thank you. I'm Danielle Bombardier. I am a representative of labor. I'm with the Vermont AFL-CIO. I'm also a member of the Vermont Building and Construction Trades Council. And I'm actually looking forward to getting back out in the field to work in my trade. Next week, I'll be going back out to work as an electrician and get out of the office for a while. So that has been something I've been looking forward to. Thank you. I'll pass to Kelly.
Hello, I'm Kelly Klein. I am on the Climate Council as the representative for the small business community. I'm the owner and CEO of Grunfell Meadery and Havoc Mead in St. Albans, Vermont. And I'm also a member of the cross-sector mitigation subcommittee for the council, and acting as a liaison between this and that. So we had our meeting, we meet, the cross-sector meets every other week. We had our meeting earlier today. So it's been, yes, a long day of meetings for me as well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting outside more comfortably. My daughter will go out in any weather, no matter what, and I'm not quite as intrepid as she is. So it's been nice to have those couple warm, sunny days, and I'm looking forward to more of that. Let's see, I'll pass it along to Chris.
Hey there, I'm Chris Campany, Wyndham Regional Commission. I was appointed by the House to represent municipal interests on the council. Yeah, down here in the sunny, I'm in Townsend, Vermont, and interesting. We're just from my perch right here. We bought a new house, new to us house, in December and moved in, and we live on Mill Brook and been watching all the various birds and other things coming in as the seasons change, and that's been good. I'm anxious to plant. I'm ready to going to do a whole bunch of stream bank restoration and habitat restoration work along the brook, and generally feeling okay. We've got a lot of we're probably going to be involved heavily in working with towns about how to make use of the America Rescue Plan Act funding. And there are so many infinitely more questions and answers at this point about how they can use this once in a generation funding. So just kind of, I guess, kind of in a holding pattern on that right now. Let's see who's next. Let's see. How about Jennifer?
Hi there, I'm Jennifer Micah. I'm General Counsel for Department of Children and Families. And Sarah, every time I see you, I see snow out your window. And I was like, is that a picture or just always really snow out her backyard? Yeah, so I'm fortunate we don't have snow. I'm in East Montpelier, so usually we do, but no. So I've gone biking a couple times already, and I'm totally got the itch now, so I'm really looking forward to that. And my dad came within a hair's breadth of dying of COVID in December, and he didn't. Intubation, the whole thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing him as soon as we are all vaccinated. He's not.
Jennifer, do you want to choose someone else?
Oh yeah,
Thank
I will
you.
choose Ross.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Ross McDonald. I'm Public Transit Program Manager at AOT. And yeah, we live in Peacham. We have 2 kids, 16 and 13. And it's mud season, but it's a small mud season. If it's not ski season, then that means we're biking. And we're really looking forward to this year. We did use some relief money to buy some electric bikes. And with the hills around here, really looking forward to the help and longer rides and all those things. So a bit embarrassed, but still really looking forward to getting on those things. So I don't know who is left.
I'll recognize Virginie, I think has joined us. Yeah. I don't know if she's able to get on the screen, but we welcome Virginie. We're just reminding everyone who we are, and we are sort of saying something that we might be looking forward to as we approach spring and perhaps a new phase in our COVID life experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I am Virginie Diambu. I'm still new to being a racial equity director with the CVOU. And I am, well, I cannot wait to socialize again. I feel like I've been in my house for the entire time. So I'm really hoping that, you know, we will be able to hug each other very soon and just be outside and, you know, do things. Yeah.
That's nice. Virginie, let's see. I'm seeing, is Liz Shields on?
I am. I'm happy to go. So I'm Liz, and I am an AmeriCorps member serving with the Eco AmeriCorps program, which is housed in the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. So I'm here as a staff person, and wow, I'm really looking forward to getting away from my computer. As much as I love seeing everyone's face on Zoom, part of AmeriCorps is like getting out there and, you know, getting hands dirty and breaking a sweat. So I'm excited for some manual labor for Vermont communities coming up soon in the summer, hopefully. And as far as COVID, I'm just, I'm happy that my grandparents and parents are vaccinated, and just it's nice to see as time goes on, more and more people are getting vaccinated, and it's just it's a relief, and it seems like we're on the way to getting over this hump. So yeah, I don't know who is left.
I'm wondering if Beverly or Eris are with us. No.
I don't, and Beverly did email me to say that she wasn't sure she'd be able to make it based on her location and access to internet service. I do see Nadia, and I see Jane, and I see Amanda. So
yes, good. Nadia, do you want to share?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sue. And hi, everyone. I am Nadia again, and I'm in Manchester Center, Vermont. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to, I was listening to this webinar recently, one of which was on gender equity, and the second of which was on intergenerational climate justice. And both of them felt really real for the work that we're doing here. But one of the astounding statistics that they shared is that the progress that women have made up until 2019 has regressed so much in light of COVID that we're now at 1990 levels. And it'll take us until 2024 to get back to where women were in the workplace pre-COVID. So what I'm super excited about hearing that daunting statistic is for COVID to lift and for women to, take back everything. So it's exciting.
Nice. That's that's daunting and a great idea. Let's see. So Amanda, can you join us?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Hi, everyone. I work at Capstone Community Action with Sue, and the majority of my work is actually working on some innovative transportation projects that we're in the midst of building. And today I was reading some articles actually that kind of merge my work in the transportation world with just transitions, about just transitions or transportation related just transitions. So I was reading some really interesting articles about access to sidewalks and disability considerations with some of the funding that just came down the pipeline or is being talked about with the infrastructure package. So pretty interesting and relevant stuff. And something I'm looking forward to, I'm in a long distance relationship and my partner lives in Boston. So I'm really excited for vaccinations and welcoming him to Vermont to interact with my friends and family up here. So yeah, sense of normalcy.
Nice. Yeah, wow. How about you, Jane? Thank you, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I am the director of the Global Warming Solutions Act, so helping you through this journey over the next year or beyond. I work then within the Agency of Natural Resources. And I have moved from, for folks' orientation, there are 3 departments within the Agency of Natural Resources: Fish and Wildlife, Forest and Parks and Recreation, and then Environmental Conservation. And I spent almost 16 years working in the Fish and Wildlife Department. And then now have moved into the central office, which is a rather small component of the agency. And so it is far-reaching and works collaboratively with all 3 departments to administer the work of the Agency of Natural Resources, including the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is far-reaching and has impacts across those departments and outside of ANR. So let's see, what am I excited about? Well, I told you all that I really like winter, like Sue. And so it's been a bit of a tease, sort of letting it go and having it come back today. My husband's going skiing tonight, so I'm a little jealous. But I too, like Ross, really love riding my bike, and Jennifer, and did a beautiful dirt road ride last night and enjoyed that a lot too before the rain came in. So anything to be outside, and I'm not afraid of being cold or warm or whatever. I just like to be outside, especially to regenerate after I've been on these meetings since 8 in the morning, as I'm sure Sarah has too, and others staring at the computer with kids off from school today. So that's who I keep turning my attention to. So thank you for bearing with me, and it's really a pleasure to be with you all tonight.
Well, thank you. I bow down to all of you. I think women have to always be super women in the workplace, but during COVID, it's the super duper women. And I am Sue Minter, and I am the executive director at Capstone Community Action and a Senate-appointed committee member of the Climate Council representing Community Action Network, which really is a whole effort to help lift people out of poverty. So I am very honored to be on this subcommittee and council, and also very busy with many, many things supporting people with low incomes through this crisis that we continue to be within. I'm really looking forward. I received my first vaccine this week, and it really does give me tremendous hope. I am a caregiver for my 91-year-old mother, who I'm so looking forward to being in her midst without a mask, to being able to hug her and even eat in the same room with her. And that's something I'm very much looking forward to, and I think will happen within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And I also have 2 children who are grown, but hope to come back once we're vaccinated. So that is what I'm very much looking forward to. I want to move forward with the agenda, unless, is there anyone that I missed? Is David, are you with us? I just see David. Would you like to share?
Yep. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share. Good afternoon, everybody. For those who weren't here last week, my name is David Flum. I work with an organization called the Consensus Building Institute, and we are guiding the facilitation of the overall Vermont Climate Council process. And that means I'm here to be helpful as needed in this subcommittee as well. I am also very hopeful about spring, getting outside with my kids. We may this weekend get out on the water. I'm here in Portland, Maine. So this might be our sort of weekend to get out and finally venture out into the bay. So it's a good milestone.
That's a nice thought. Terrific. All right, so moving on in our agenda, I did want to check in about the minutes that were presented to you, and I want to ask if there are any additions, reflections, concerns that you might have about the minutes. So hearing that, and you can give thumbs up, thumbs down, you can just raise your hand if you have problems, but I'm not seeing anything but thumbs up. So we're going to accept the minutes. And we want to appreciate, Amanda is really our minute taker. A couple weeks ago, Liz was our minute taker. So thank you both so much for recording the work we do. It's a big job and a really important one. And it's not easy. It's hard to take good notes. So I now want to just check in. There are a couple of announcements I want to make, and Sarah might have more, or Nadia. And I did want to mention, because not everyone heard, that Kaya, who is our other co-chair, is not able to be with us tonight, but will be back next week. We have developed a resource list. Capstone's intern, who, I don't know if she's on us, Ellie Curtis, helped us with a presentation, as you may recall, the scan of the different states. And now she and Amanda and others have created a resource list of what is the body of work out there with respect to climate justice, environmental justice. So we want to just compile resources that we have access to. So those are currently available essentially on a Google Doc that I believe Sarah has shared. And we invite you not only to review those resources, learn from them, reflect on them, but also add to them. So that's thing one. Thing two is we're really excited to be sponsoring a workshop next Wednesday? Tuesday or Wednesday? I forget. Wednesday. And that will be for the whole Climate Council and beyond, I assume, because it's a public body. And we are hearing from leaders in the field of environmental justice and climate justice from Vermont. So both from UVM and the Vermont Law School Environmental Justice Clinic. Those, and I can see that they're being put up in the chat. Thank you. I think this is a real opportunity for us. I really, really want to encourage everyone to make time in their lives to participate in this, because I think we are setting it up as a way to orient ourselves and center us in the work that's already out there in terms of thinking about what is environmental justice. We're in a new and evolving field, and we're right in the thick of leading. So as leaders in this, help orient yourself. I'm looking forward to being oriented. And so we'll continue to send you invitations to that. The other thing I wanted to mention was that we had a member who was nominated, I guess, to join this subcommittee, whose name is Kitiara Casey, who hasn't been able to join. And so we wanted to ask whether folks want to reach out. I will say that Kitiara is a member of the Head Start Policy Council, and that's the governing body of Head Starts, which are low-income childcare and family supports for at-risk families that many community action agencies help run. So she was representing low-income families with children, and I do know of other similarly representative of that demographic that were on our original list. So I just wanted to hear what the pleasure of the group is. Are we content to essentially not have that demographic represented in the way that we might otherwise, or do you want to reach out to the other folks who I believe might still be interested? So I'm going to take any thoughts. Go ahead and speak up. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I think we need representation from low-income families with children on this committee. So I would advocate for reaching out.
Okay.
I don't know the backgrounds of everybody who's on, so I don't know if there are people with that. So correct me, but it seems like we're at least many of us are from a very similar demographic.
I wanted to just see, are there other reflections or thumbs up about that suggestion? I'll give my thumb up. I support it, but I wanted to, it's also possible we've got enough people around this table, but I know not everybody's able to be here every time. All right. Well, so Sarah and I know a couple of similar demographics on the list of high. Remember we ranked people from a much larger list. So on that highly ranked lists, there's a couple of other options. So we'll reach out, and hopefully, if it makes sense, we'll invite them and see who's still interested. All right. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sarah, were there other announcements that you had or Nadia had at this moment? Okay. So I'm going to pass the microphone, to Jane to update us on the bigger picture of where we are.
Thanks. So unlike my normal long-windedness, I don't have too many updates. I just want to speak to two particular recent developments. One, just wanted to update you on the contract and let you know the details around the execution of it. And just let you know that the challenges of it haven't been around the engagement and outreach components, but really around the website. And how we handle sort of the migration of a new website and the content onto a state system. So I'm hopeful. I thought we were already there, and I was actually just, while you were talking, Sue, peeking at an email that just came in with more revisions to the contract. So I am really hopeful that we are close to sharing it back to Climate Access for them to approve, because now the scope of work from their proposal has been changed so much that I'm a little anxious about that. But hopefully, they have given me every certainty once we've committed and agreed to the scope of work and how the payment provisions have been set up, which I hope won't be too much of a surprise to them, then we'll move it quickly through the process of having it reviewed and approved, because it has to go to the agency of administration for their approval because of the contract amount. Hopefully that will all be fast. I just want to draw your attention to something that I don't know if maybe Sue and Sarah and others on this committee who reviewed the proposal with a finer eye than I did, but in sort of revising and revisiting the scope of work, what I finally only just realized, and I know this is of great interest to this group, is that there is a section of it that discusses about payments to marginalized community members to participate in engagement and outreach. And I had sort of missed that, and I know that we've talked about that as maybe as not being possible from the state, but as a philanthropic effort. Apparently, it is possible to make those payments through a contract with state dollars. So we actually have built into the contract the ability to pay folks to participate in your stakeholder groups in the engagement and outreach. And so that's something we can start to think about. And there's a scale in there to talk about how those payments are calculated. Apparently that happens quite often, and I didn't know that. And it's normally handled through a contract. So I thought that was an exciting notice that I hadn't picked up on right out of the gate. So look forward to having them here next week. And then along the same theme, and just sort of thinking about engagement and outreach, David and I had a meeting earlier today with the steering committee where we reviewed and approved the sort of areas that were potential overlap between the subcommittees, and identified sort of lead subcommittees on areas. And public engagement, recognizing that all of the subcommittees will have a role in sort of rolling out materials and testing and having an iterative process with the public around the work that they're doing. It will all be led and spearheaded by this group. And what that looks like still, we're not exactly sure, but I imagine it will largely be driven by you all setting the tone and pace and process for public engagement to occur, and recognizing where and when we need to tap into other subcommittees to ensure that they're sort of understanding of the timeline that's in front of them. And that was started to talk about at cross-sector mitigation today, and Kelly was there for that meeting. And we did talk a bit about early and often engagement, especially with that subcommittee and the work that they're doing because of the far-reaching impacts around greenhouse gas reductions and what those policies and strategies are going to look like. And so I mentioned, as did Kelly, the meeting with your group next Thursday to start to frame up public engagement with the contractor, and sort of teed it up as folks from that committee could join if they want, or Kelly could also serve sort of in keeping an eye open for how to plug back in with cross-sector pretty quickly after that meeting. So those were just the two immediate tasks. And I'll also recognize that we're working hard on sort of a draft outline for the climate action plan, and hopefully that will be shared and you guys can all be thinking about the role for just transitions in the development of that as well. So that can be a further out conversation. Any questions? Great. Or David, feel free. Yes. If I missed something that you saw too. Thank you.
All right, a lot to digest. Just checking. Any other questions or comments for that? Great. Okay. I'm so excited because we're really pretty much on time with our agenda. So I want to just say it's been so lovely to be working with Nadia, and when she's able to join us, Kaya, and it enriches the experience of being a leader of this subcommittee. And we really have been trying to figure out ways that we, in this virtual environment, we who have very different life experiences to learn from and build from, how do we come to know one another so that we really can feel a sense of collective? So Nadia suggested that we actually give time for each of us if we want. Not everyone is going to be required, but to actually do a little bit more time to talk a little bit about their story and I guess how it relates to this work. So Nadia agreed to model that. So I'm going to hand the microphone to her.
Great. Hi, Sue, and thanks so much for letting me speak to this. So we are putting together a slide, and Sarah has the first one that provides a little bit of a framework, if you will, for what this engagement might look like moving forward. So all of us understand that engaging remotely has huge complexities, particularly when we're providing a public service where we're supposed to collaborate as a team to represent the public, to engage with the public, and to really get feedback as we move forward. And so to offer an opportunity for us to get to know each other much more in depth, We're having this weekly member spotlight. These guidelines that I'm going to walk through real briefly are just suggestions. You can be as creative as you like. And as Sue mentioned, if you prefer to pass, that's also an option. In that first column, we have our recommended guidelines. The first bullet reads why. So why are we doing this? We really want an opportunity to share insights and experiences that are otherwise challenged by remote collaboration, to really build a team as we work on these really complex issues, and to kind of really understand what each of us bring to the table and are most excited about as we work on this, again, hugely complex opportunity for Vermont. The objective is what you offer to Vermont's Just Transitions Dialogue and the State Climate Action Plan. Our audience is both subcommittee members as well as members of the public who join us and who are really interested in the insights and experience that we bring to this process. And then finally, from an administrative side, we'll have one member present each week. That member will rotate the member alphabetically by last name. You have 2 to 3 minutes to talk about yourself. We want this to be interactive, so please put your questions in chat. If you want to email the individual speaker after or during the meeting, we want this to be something that's enriching for all of us, so please ask those questions. And as I move through this, I opted for slides, but slides are optional. The 3 columns that we have to the right really highlight the kind of interest areas that we're looking to learn more about with each of our members. This can be either professional experience, and the sub-bullets highlight some of the insights you can provide there, the personal experience that you bring to the table as we tackle the issue of just transitions, and this can be your lived experience, personal stories relevant to just transitions, or key opportunities or challenges that you see that we're going to confront as we move forward in this process. And then finally, what you believe your role on the subcommittee is, both as an individual and as a community voice. And the way we phrase this question is, when it comes to just transitions, protecting the workforce and enabling marginalized and or vulnerable community voices as we implement climate change, what are the roles and or voices that you represent before the subcommittee? So we'll dive in with a bit about myself. If you go to the next slide. I have talked time and again about my professional experience, but it's all there so you can kind of get a good look at it. At a high level, as I mentioned before, I worked at General Motors and Honda working on an all-electric, zero-emission, self-driving fleet. As you can imagine, self-driving cars, robots on the roads have a lot of complex regulatory and legislative issues. It was really exciting for me to work on how to integrate that technology so that members of the public can use it, but how to do so in a way that's safe, but also in a way that's green. During that time, I also worked on the California's Future of Work Commission. So they evaluated the ways in which automation overall, not just in the transportation space, will be impacting the workforce of today, and how we can make sure that vulnerable communities such as labor and others who are working today aren't impacted by technology, and more specifically, robots taking over jobs. Most specific to this work, I've done a lot of work on energy programs and ensuring that they provide an opportunity and a platform for minority and marginalized communities to speak up. I listed some of those policy work groups here. They include the Self-Generation Incentive Program, which allows for heat pump water heaters, as well as energy storage to meet the grid, but also on a federal level, the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. So how can individual families who are confronting the question of whether or not they should put dinner on the table or keep the lights on, what are the roles that the federal government plays, and how can we provide funding opportunities for them not to ultimately make that choice? And then finally, I worked at NextEra Energy and Florida Power and Light, the largest wind and solar company in the world, the largest electric utility in the world, and really an all the above energy company that really focused on the ways in which the grid can be more resilient for users. In terms of my personal background, more the fun stuff, I'm very proudly half Japanese, half Mexican, and I hail from the great state of California. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. It has given me a great opportunity to bring what California has done and in the rich environmental space to what we can do here in Vermont. I'm really thrilled to bring those insights here. I'm an alumnus of Georgetown and Yale University School of Management. Both my parents actually did not graduate from high school, so that opportunity to be a Latina and an Asian American, to go to college and to really see change and be change in the world has been a great opportunity for me. I was also the founder and president of Latinx at Cruise. That was the company's first cultural diversity group, really identifying and establishing the voice of the Latino community in the tech center, which represents a significantly low number, which is part of the reason why I wanted to create this group, creating allies in this space and really propelling the great work that this community does to recognition levels that it's necessary and missing, frankly, in the tech sector. And then finally, I come from a poverty-rich experience, we'll call it. I have very humble beginnings. As I mentioned before, both of my parents didn't go to high school. We struggled a lot. I had the great opportunity to get a quality education to propel myself out of that experience. But in growing up in it, I do think I bring some great insights in the ways in which, as I mentioned before, like we see in LIHEAP, where individual families are struggling, and more so today in light of COVID. So how can we ensure that everyone, low income, rural, those who are in the BIPOC community, have a voice in this process? And that brings us to the final point, is what voice do I see myself playing? And we're all going to put on different hats as we move forward with this subcommittee. It's small, but we have hugely complex work. So again, we're all going to wear different hats. But something that's especially important to me is El Voz Latino, or the Latino experience. I want to make sure that even though we're a small demographic here in Vermont, that we are present and that we are acknowledged in this hugely complex issue of how climate action impacts individual communities that are in the agricultural sector, or perhaps have linguistic challenges in really engaging. Perhaps due to my work and the workforce of tomorrow, I really want to work on workforce protection for all Vermonters. So regardless of what your income is or what your regional affiliation is, I want to make sure that Vermonters across the spectrum are protected in this really important plan that we're rolling out next year, hopefully. And then finally, given my work at General Motors and Honda and NextEra and Florida Power and Light, these huge Fortune 200 companies, I really believe I can provide some insights in the private sector space. And finally, as I mentioned before, I'm in Manchester Center. There's no snow on the ground right now and a lot of sun in my face. So proud to be a regional representation in that capacity as well. And as I mentioned, as we go to the next slide, we are going to rotate by next or last name. If you have any issues you don't want to provide your spotlight, that's absolutely welcome, and just flag it for Sue, Sarah, and myself. But next is Danielle, and we're really excited to hear from you personally. Again, because of my work in the labor space, I'm really excited to see the ways in which today's environment and the work that we're doing is impacting those in the labor sector. So thank you. Any questions?
So you had welcomed people to put questions in the chat, and I tried to put something in the chat. My chat is funny, but I'm curious what brought you to Vermont?
So I was in the tech sector in San Francisco, and I had a really interesting experience when I returned to work from maternity leave, wherein they did some pretty interesting things. And so I wanted to take a very strong position on that and step out of the tech sector and really address some of the maternity and women's rights issues that we face constantly. And as I mentioned before, something that's more pressing in light of COVID. And I also wanted an environment that I felt that I could raise my kids in. My husband is originally from Manchester, Vermont, so it seemed like a no-brainer. So we came here about 1.5 years ago. Any other questions?
That was awesome.
How's the transition been to Vermont? How do you like it?
You know, I don't get outdoors as much as I would like to. So we moved here maybe 2 weeks before COVID really hit. And so we were really lucky in that regard. And as a result of it, we've been spending a lot of time indoors. We had a baby during this time. It was a great time to not have the option to go outside. But overall, it's such a beautiful place to live. It's such a beautiful place to engage in issues such as the one we're addressing here, such as climate action. And so I've loved it so far.
Wonderful. Any other questions? I don't know why, Nadia, but we can't see you right now. All right. Well, that was lovely. And I hope that we can keep going with our spotlights, because it really is great to get to know us and what we bring. So I wanted to move forward now to really looking at our work plan. And Sarah, I would have recognized both Sarah and Nadia have been working on developing a visual presentation that helps kind of put things together in a timeline that we want to present and then get reflection on. So Sarah, I'm going to actually hand it to you and Nadia to sort of lead us on this.
Yeah, and Nadia gets full credit for the visually appealing look at this. I'm not sure this is for me to hopefully you guys can see my screen. It just said my internet cut out, but we'll see. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is just continually bring forward some of the deliverables that our group is working on, and when we see those landing based on the work of the other subcommittees and based on the conversations coming out of this group. So I'm happy to talk a little bit, but I guess we didn't practice this dance too much. Nadia, you did just talk, but if you wanted to walk people through this, I wanted to offer to toss it to you.
Absolutely. And so the reason why we wanted to create this is because we're all coming to the table to work on this hugely complex issue that has a number of questions that we have to address, that has a number of deliverables, and we wanted to put it in one clear resource guide so that we can kind of look at where we're headed and how we're going to get there. And so on the top of this document, what we highlight are 4 key deliverables that we would like to discuss as what we'd like to provide as a subcommittee. The first of which is the Environmental Justice Full Committee Workshop that we're having next week. That's on April 7th. As you all know, I'm going to back Sue and Sarah up and saying, please attend if you can, because it's absolutely critical, particularly for us as subcommittee members, to fully understand what environmental justice means and how best to communicate and audit this, if you will, for other subcommittees as we move forward. But this is a workshop that we're going to provide, as they mentioned, next week in conjunction with the University of Vermont, as well as the University of Vermont Law School, and that'll be available to all members of the Vermont Climate Council. The next item that we have here, number 2, are the preliminary just transitions principles that we discussed, I think, 2 meetings ago, and really trying to figure out what are the early stage guidelines or North Star that we can provide to other subcommittees as they begin this work on this really, really important opportunity. What we would hate to see is that other subcommittees commence this work and have to go retroactive to really make sure that they have accounted for what the just transitions and the equity lens is in this important deliverable that they have at the end of the year. What we would ideally like to see in this product, and this is something that we absolutely want to collaborate and make sure that we have input from all of the subcommittee members. But what we would like to see is the principles that we would like individuals to incorporate on a draft level, if you will, because they will be early stage. We want to identify those frontline communities, those that are most vulnerable as the state moves forward on its climate action plan, and make sure that each of the subcommittees are prioritizing and having visibility into those specific impacts to those communities as they move forward. And then finally, because there's so much complexity to this work, we want to make sure that there's a resource for everyone to really fully understand what is climate and environmental justice, and what does it mean to have an equity lens that relates to distributive, procedural, contextual, and corrective equity. So we'll work on that moving forward. I'm really excited to work with everyone on that. The third deliverable that we have, this is something that is outlined in the legislation, is optional, but what does a just transition measurement tool look like? And this is item 3. This is something we'd like to ideally have developed by June of this year, and it'll be a final measurement tool to ongoingly assess the equitability of programs and strategies developed by the council. So after they move forward and they have the programs that they would like the state to move forward with, how can they kind of check and balance themselves to make sure that they have what they need in just transitions. And then finally, we have the principles that we're all working hard on together. This is really going to focus on how the ways in which all of the climate action plan really integrates what it means for vulnerable and frontline communities, including rural, low income, and others, particularly members of the BIPOC community. The bottom half of this chart real quickly is just kind of our ongoing projects in addition to these deliverables, and these are kind of ongoing work. So there's no key deadline, if you will. The public engagement process is hugely critical. It's something that's also provided in the legislation that we'll be moving forward on. The first opportunity of which, again, is something that we're kicking off next week with the Environmental Justice Workshop. We're going to continue the conversation on the ways in which we can provide a just transition lens to other subcommittees through representation. And beginning this May, as we discussed last meeting, we'll have designees that'll attend the other subcommittee meetings and provide key findings and opportunities to our own subcommittee as we move forward. And then finally, we're going to continue, to the extent that we can, collaboration with the Science and Data Committee to ensure that we have validation of some of the key opportunities that we are providing as recommendations to the other subcommittees. Between the time of June and December, we're going to continue this important work. A lot of it will be on the shoulders of consultants that we'll hire for it, but informed by each of the subcommittee members, and we're really excited to see the final outcomes this December. Any questions? That's a lot.
Yeah, I just want to say that is really is a lot, and I know we sent it in advance, and I think it's just trying to have an arc of where we are and what we really need to be doing in the near term, as well as what it looks like and some key milestones. So first, questions or reflections from anybody. Does this all kind of make sense, or are there some red flags that anyone feels or sees when they look at this? I'm kind of going to zero in on sort of some key. I see that Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
I've mentioned this before, and I'm just still nervous and I know that we're hiring consultants and others. I just still hope we're going to be able to get some kind of professional expert labor impact assessment assistance. Because I think we kind of know as we look at the different options on how to meet the goals set for the council. We'll know what sectors are going to be impacted, but I'm guessing we're going to be particularly interested in specifically the labor impacts and impacts on household income security, that kind of thing, not just impacts to sectors broadly. And that doesn't necessarily affect this timeline per se. It's just I'm concerned that it's a gap that we have. I know I've mentioned it before, but I think it's really important because it's one of the things that we're tasked with.
So I think you're raising a super point. Again, this is big and broad, and I think the more detailed was in the most immediate, which was to kind of begin the public engagement and this principles and assessment tool. But you're raising the issue of our responsibility, or somewhere in here, we need to be thinking about the impact of an impact assessment on particularly vulnerable communities or whatever communities that we are concerned about.
Well, and so I guess I'm thinking of the just transitions. I know the preliminary principles, but what are those labor impact principles, and by extension, what are those household income principles that we need to be thinking about as far as what are we looking for as far as principles in that area? Because I think I can kind of guess some, but it seems like actually having some assistance in laying that out from a labor perspective would be helpful. As far as I don't know, the words aren't really coming to me, but basically, something that could be, and I'm not trying to make this, kind of a cold and objective, but something that can be measured. What is the standard by which that principle would be based in terms of impacts that may be negative as a result of what changes in the sector. And I think I've mentioned this before. I grew up in coal country, and you just see these transitions happen. Maybe they won't be as anything dramatic like total changes in that energy sector, but what are our measurements in terms of just how do we kind of create that threshold for the principle in terms of impacts that may be felt. So I'll hush up now. I'm trying to work this out in my own head.
Well, maybe what I'm hearing is something, we've talked about principles and we have a measurement tool, but I'm hearing you have a particular lens around work and employment and workers. But I also think you're pointing to who and when are we actually assessing potential impacts and measuring. And those, we talk about a measurement tool. So I don't know. I'm curious if David or Jane have thoughts about this, but I think you raise an important point. And I do want us to maybe carve out space. And I feel like, David, you might be helpful at having us sort of brainstorm very soon on this trajectory of creating principles. What are the principles that we really want to make sure we put on the board for us to be cogitating about? And Chris, I think that's part of it. You want to make sure this issue doesn't get, and we don't have the whiteboard yet, but I think we should do some real brainstorming, very soon, so that we can actually start to articulate the things that we're worrying about.
Yeah, and Sarah in the chat asked if you don't have a specific written example of what I'm talking about, and frankly, this is, I'm a planner and I I work around these issues, but this is a bit of a new topic, for when getting into the details of this, and so I could try to write something, but this is where I think I'm sure there are people out there who know this stuff, who've done a lot of kind of sectoral impact analysis. We did it here, looking at aggregate community impacts related to the Vermont Yankee closure and how that's going to reverberate throughout the economy. But even there, what I would have loved to have had is we knew it was going to be service sector employees that were going to be most impacted, because a lot of the Vermont Yankee employees were actually going to be fully employed someplace else, and so it was going to be more the indirect impacts that were going to affect the larger community. But we didn't do a deeper analysis about what service sector employees, and how could you possibly mitigate those impacts. And that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. I could kind of explain what I don't know and what questions would like to have asked, but Sarah, I could try to write something, but it's getting beyond my area of expertise.
And I also feel like I'm not sure if I think that has to emerge, and that concern emerges out of this committee. And I don't know that we're going to come up with it, but I think the point is, by raising it, Jane, and I think we've talked about this assessment tool, this mapping, is that something that your RFP around technical services, which I think you're developing now, might incorporate? Is it in your thinking, our thinking as a council at this point? And then I think there's a few other people to listen to. Sorry.
Okay, just to speak to the mapping, it is not the current technical RFP, which I do think of as sort of the mass amount of work that has to happen, but does not cover every nuanced tool we might need. It really focuses on greenhouse gas emission reductions, and then some stuff that can't really be teased out of that, the carbon budget sort of sequestration aspects. So it's really about that component, and it does not get at everything we need, perhaps. And it keeps highlighting for me, and maybe it's next week or maybe it's the week after, as you think about work planning, that we invite in and learn about the mapping tool that's happening on behalf of our agency right now, and make sure that that is or isn't going to cover what is needed for this climate action plan. But yes, there's still an opportunity for us to do a separate RFP or separate grant or contract if we don't feel like that is getting us what we need, because I hear that.
And I want to speak to Danielle, or recognize Danielle.
Thank you. Yeah, what Chris is saying really resonates with me as well, being a labor advocate. And I was thinking about this as I was reviewing some of this material, and wondering if that's part of what science and data would be looking at. And also, I'm part of a group called Renew, which Kaya is also a member of. And I know that we have had this conversation, and I believe there are impact studies based on investment in certain renewables and things like that through UVM. So they might have some resources that we could even look into, or individuals there who do that type of work, or tap into what Renew has already come up with in terms of their data.
Yeah, I want to clarify that Chris is not really speaking to the mapping. I think what Danielle and what Chris are speaking to is an impact assessment, and a sectoral labor impact assessment, and an economic analysis of that that maybe is being done. Maybe Renew can help bring some of these ideas. In fact, we might want to think about asking these kinds of questions of the UVM and Vermont Law School folks who we meet with on Tuesday. And I want to say that it is a workshop. They're going to speak and present, but they really want to engage with us. So frankly, this could be a good question, like what's already being done out there and where's the white space that we should be advocating perhaps as we look at that, the impacts. Maybe we need to think about an RFP around that. That's all I'm thinking. Any other thoughts? I'm sorry, I can't really see. Sarah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry to be like overly relying on the chat. I think part of what I'm thinking, I'm not, Chris, I don't think that you've already done this analysis. I think that's what you're saying is like it should be a part of this process. But for me and my learning to really kind of fully grasp what you're talking about, like I get these terms like impact analysis, that, you know, like I want to see something and read it to kind of understand what do you mean when you're saying that? Like what kind of analysis is that? What does that look like? What kind of information is that? I think that will help me digest it. So if there are examples of things, even if they aren't related to climate, climate work, but just an example of what it is that we're talking about instead of just throwing around these really wonderful, intelligent terms, that will really, really help me ground in it moving forward. So it's just kind of an ask for this group. I think we're coming from different places. I love words and what they will bring to it, but I don't want to get lost in it.
It looks like Chris may have shared his economic impact assessment for Wyndham Regional. Maybe it's planner think, but that's a concept that I'm used to hearing and I have a vision of, but clearly it isn't something that non-planners necessarily think about. But it helps us project what the impacts of different decisions are going to be on the workforce. Anyway. I think that might be a good thing for us to be putting in the parking lot essentially, and I'm wondering if we want to add something into maybe even the measurement tool. Maybe it's measurement tool and impact evaluation strategies. You know, maybe we're not developing a tool for impact assessment, but we want to make sure by the end of June that that's incorporated into how. I'm looking at number 3 here on Nadia's on the presentation that talks about a measurement tool. Is there any language, Chris, or anyone else that you might want to add to incorporate that?
Ask that again, Sue. I'm sorry.
I was looking at the language under number 3 that says just transitions measurement tool. And I'm wondering if in that space and sort of time frame, it might behoove us to add language that captures your desire for a sectoral impact assessment is what I heard you say.
Yeah, I'll tease that out and put that in the chat.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts or reflections to this presentation? Is it helpful to sort of see where we are and where we're going? I think I see David.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to mention that we've been talking about the kinds of studies that this subcommittee could ask for and the Climate Council could pay for. And that's not so clearly put on this chart, right? It's a little different than the other pieces on this chart. So I wonder if we just need to include that explicitly to say, this subcommittee can say the council should commission this kind of work, right? So the measurement tool is only going to function if you have data and information to do it by, and if there's clear gaps that could be filled with some consultant help, that could be something you all say. So I just want to mention that, 'cause it's a little different than the tool itself is if there's data out there, whether you say, we can fix this data problem by commissioning this kind of study, and Jane's got the budget to do it. So let's go ahead and do it.
Thanks. Do you think it's important to have that in this presentation? I mean, this is sort of something that's helping guide our group where it's going. I don't know, but I think if we need to make a marker on, let's add, develop list of additional technical resource needs. Maybe that's it. And maybe we should do that in April because they're coming up in our minds pretty quickly and we don't want to wait. What do people think of adding an additional bullet or whatever we want to call it? I think that's a good point. We should be thinking now about what is the research that we think is missing, that we want to ask the council to build upon. Kelly?
So I do think that might be a good thing to note in here. And I've just been thinking about what Chris was saying and the discussion around jobs and things like that. And I feel like there's several different things to bear in mind. One is that we want to make sure that the decisions made by this council are not going to, if they're going to cause jobs to be lost, certain industries to close their businesses and things like that, that we capture that and we consider that. Two, climate change in general is probably going to result in the loss of jobs. So that might be something else we want to think about, not just like trying to meet our goals and reduce our emissions, but climate change is happening and it's going to continue happening. We're going to lose jobs at, say, ski resorts, for example. And then the third is, I think there's a hope that some of the things we're putting into place will create jobs, that we're going to be generating energy locally rather than outsourcing, et cetera, but there's no guarantee that those new jobs will be automatically filled by the people who lost their jobs by other decisions we made. So making sure that there's something in this plan that helps connect people who lose their jobs with the new jobs we're creating, and that they're not just being left behind and staying unemployed.
Would that be called a just transition? Thank you,
Chris,
Kelly. Very, very
right
good.
there.
That's why planners like to do these projections, so they can think about, oh, well, how do we actually help train the workforce of tomorrow if we know where we are going to get and what the impacts might be. Okay, other questions? Chris, do you have another comment or point? Your hand is still up, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put a bunch of stuff in chat.
Okay.
But I totally agree with what Kelly is saying. It's not just, in the transition, it is also, we really do need to think in the climate law scenario, what we need to look at the impacts on the economic sectors as defined by jobs, as defined by households, the whole picture, so we can figure out what mitigation actions can be taken. So I've thrown some stuff, just in kicking some things around in my head. I've put some stuff in chat that may or may not be useful.
That's great. I can't watch chat, but I can see hands. Nadia?
I just want to echo what everyone's saying is really important, and a lot of it is foundational to the just transition movement overall. So when we're talking about bridges and we're talking about job protections for existing jobs and the bridges and retraining of the workforce for jobs of tomorrow in the climate action space, these are things that are all the roots, if you will. And so it's exciting because it means that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and there'll be a lot of resources to really reflect on it. My one concern about us being the leader on that deliverable is we really have to reflect on some of the programs and the recommendations that other subcommittees are making in order for us to evaluate whether or not we're going to lose jobs in certain sectors and creating ones and others, and where the displacement will ultimately be. So I'm wondering if, rather than creating a list, we make it a recommendation or a principle as part of our final product, or something that we outline in our preliminary principles before other subcommittees, that they need to work with us to identify those sectors early so that we can provide early stage feedback. Because my concern, for instance, is, say we're saying if nuclear jobs are lost, then we have to make sure that there is another opportunity for them to be retrained and get rehired. And then, someone says, well, Vermont Yankee closed a long time ago, so what are you talking about? And I'm scared of that kind of conversation.
So I do think we're starting to move into this realm of identifying principles. So I want us to put these ideas in a parking lot And I want us to, maybe next meeting, we need to actually start a time that we actually just start throwing our ideas onto a table. And I think that we are coming up with what we believe, for us to even be able to think ahead, there may be more research and data gathering. So I think there was a recommendation to add into this presentation that maybe it's May, that we really think about the research needs that go beyond what we think is currently being funded. So I want to suggest that as a marker. Does that make sense? And does it make sense for the committee next week, in addition to hearing from the public engagement people, that we spend a little time really brainstorming and starting to put some of these ideas? Because we'll be so inspired and ideas will be just like buzzing around, because the day before we will have just been educated. All right. What time is it? Okay, so in addition to this, we want to ask the question about whether folks have excitement to cross-pollinate into other committees. This is not a requirement. This is an aspiration. We think it would be good for us to start joining some of the other subcommittees. I know that Kelly is currently on cross-sector mitigation. I believe Chris is going to join her on that. But we want to set up a strategy for engaging those who have the time to cross-pollinate. And maybe there will be a time when that's our priority to do. I think we talked about that in May, right? I'm looking at, yeah, okay. Sarah, do you have an idea for how do we gauge people's interest level?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, just to, if I can add to that, I think when you and Nadia and I talked about it, we thought about, it's a big ask, right? These are weekly meetings, or every other week, and very long meetings for some of them. And so we were thinking that if folks were interested, we could try to almost like create little teams that could tag team, right? So that you didn't feel like you necessarily had to be at every meeting, or if you missed one, somebody else was going to be there. And so, you know, if we have a team of 2 or 3 that want to try and liaison, you don't have to necessarily be a member of the other subcommittee. You're just going to commit to, you know, trying to participate. That's kind of how we were thinking about it. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but so I mean, I don't know if people have given some thought to this. I shared the committee charters and I shared the meeting schedule. I think it would be helpful if we just were able to take a few minutes right now for people to maybe just go around, and people can pass if they're not ready and haven't had a chance to look at it. People can say, I really can't do that because I'm already overextended, and people can say, I'm interested and this is my preference, but I'd also do this, you know. So maybe that's the way to just kind of go around.
That's a great idea. I see Amanda has raised her hand. I don't know, Liz, I think you also did. Go ahead, Amanda, and then Liz.
Yeah, I got your email, Sarah, and was immediately interested in the rural resilience subcommittee. And I guess I would feel more comfortable joining their work or partaking in the meeting if I was felt like I had a clear task or a clear set of principles that I could bring from this subcommittee. So I'm not just showing up. I'm personally really interested because I grew up in the Northeast Kingdom, and I think that's a particularly underrepresented part of the state. And then also I saw that they're tasked with a lot of emergency management goals, and I work part-time in EMS, so I have some experience in that. So that was my interest in that committee, but yeah, I would feel more comfortable joining that if I had a clear task or clear set of guidelines.
Right. So we can work to write those out more specifically, but I think initially, I think you know, it would just be if you started participating, you know, this month, it would be as much just to get to know the people, get to know their work, and sort of understand. I think part of the thinking from the last week, if I remember right, was that when we have these preliminary guiding principles, it will be nice to have people who have fully sort of digested that be in the subcommittee, sort of helping to incorporate that and integrate those. So I think that was something we talked about. And then I also think you're right, something that we could do as a subcommittee is kind of think more specifically about how we can support those other subcommittees, maybe ask them how they see us supporting them. And then I think part of it's also bringing that work back to this group. So when our subcommittee meets, part of what we can incorporate into our meetings is sort of like, what are some of the issues that are coming up so that we don't feel divorced from from the climate action or climate council recommendations. I think I don't know if that helps frame it up a little bit more for people. I don't know that we've fully fleshed out it, but doing that I think would be helpful. I'll stop talking.
Something that just came to mind was that maybe as a takeaway from next week's workshop, we can at least have a good sense of definitions and terminology that we want to bring to other subcommittees. That seems like a pretty simple thing to come up with rather quickly.
Yeah, that's good. Amanda, you can be taking good notes on those definitions. Okay, Liz, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in and say that the Science and Data Subcommittee is super interesting to me. And I'd be happy to commit at least twice a month, like every other. I don't know that I can, just because my time isn't my own during the day, like I can't say yes, I'll do it for sure. But if I have a mission and like Amanda said, kind of like a goal and kind of know what I need to get from them and bring here and what I need to bring from here and give, put outwards, I can most likely commit to that like twice a month, every other, to the Science and Data that meets on Wednesdays. So
great. And I definitely like the idea of teams. I think that'll be nice for us to break into a smaller group because we'll get to know one another better. Are there anyone, let's see, I'm just going to pick on people. Danielle, do you have an aspiration or an ability to even do more than joining us here?
Yeah, Wednesdays will be my day for this type of work. So I can also do the Science and Data Subcommittee, and it also is an interesting committee to me as well. So I can plan as a team to do every other, or I could probably be there for every Wednesday as well. And then I also wanted to ask, is there a stipend for subcommittee members, or is that only for council members?
There is a stipend. There's a per diem. Jane, can you fill us in on that?
I don't think she's on anymore.
Oh.
Jane's not here, but there is, and Jane is the point person to deal with that.
So I'm so glad you raised that, and that we haven't made that clear. I apologize. So everyone who is participating has access to what we call per diems. That's the state way of helping you pay for each day you're doing this work. And I'm very excited that Jane just mentioned a whole new way that we can, through the state contract with the public engagement, also pay people to participate who are beyond us. So I'll make sure that Jane gets an email out to all of us so you all know how to access that. Thanks for asking, and apologies for not making that really clear right from the get-go.
And real quickly, I actually think she sent out an email, I don't know if it was last week or the week prior, that outlines the process as well as who you have to contact within the state to set up your account.
Okay, well, we'll get that. It could have happened before Danielle was with us. Who knows? But we'll get that right out. Thank you. All right, let's see. Nadia, you're next on my screen. Do you have an interest in a subcommittee and or the time to even do it?
Yeah, I think I'm a little challenged by the current time windows that are provided. I have the greatest interest in the cross-sector mitigation one. And so as we kind of firm up the membership of the mini team, I'd like to see how I can support that.
Nice. Well, there might be 3 of you. That's great. Iris, how about you?
I think the one that I have the most time to commit to is ag and ecosystems. But if we need people on others, I can probably shuffle around my schedule.
Well, you're the first one to mention that so far, so that's awesome. That's great. Virginie, do you have an interest? I can't hear you yet, Virginie.
Yes. So I am interested in the rural resilience and adaptation. It's just that I may not be able to attend all the meetings. So it will be great if I can have a specific task to work on. And yeah, I would be happy to participate.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm most interested in that as well. So there could be 3 of us right there. Who am I missing who might be interested in and available to join another group? Jennifer, are you interested and available to join another group?
So I can try. Like I can't promise.
It's okay if you can't.
They're all during the day, and I have to work. So I'm certainly willing to give it a shot.
Okay.
And I think in that case, I would think rural resilience is most aligned with my knowledge base. I would think, but
okay.
I'm flexible anywhere.
All right. And Abby, are you still there?
I am, yeah, and I am also willing to kind of be flexible as best I can schedule-wise, and it may be most logical for me to join IRS in agriculture and ecosystems.
That's what I was thinking and hoping. That'll be great. Ross, are you still with us? Maybe not. I know how to find him if we need him, but I have a feeling he's not going to be available running the whole program, and they've got a lot of money coming in there. Great. Well, this is, I mean, I feel like we're filling it out. I also want to mention that I have a feeling that the public engagement work is going to need a mini team to really work closely with that consultant to hone in on. We're going to hear their big ideas and we're going to respond to those. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of work that has to happen quickly in it. And I'm wondering if anyone is particularly interested in that aspect of our work. Jennifer, I think we're hearing you. If you could mute.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Nobody particularly interested in public engagement.
No,
Sarah, are you raising your hand?
I'm very interested in that work. I think I'm going to be very stretched to participate in another meeting that happens during a work day. I love that our meetings are towards the end of the day. It also means more people. This is a more accessible meeting. I'm really glad about that. But I do think, working with the public engagement consultants might be a little bit different than committing to a regular meeting, and it is work that I feel passionate about. So I think that feels like maybe a good fit for me. And we also have a couple members who aren't here today as well, and they might help fill out this this work. I just was thinking that also.
So someone is in the chat saying that their phone doesn't come off mute. I'm so sorry.
That's Ross.
Oh, Ross, he's trying to weigh in. I don't know how to help him. Ross,
so I'm happy to engage with the consultant.
Great. I'm interested in that too, probably more than joining the rural resilience. Okay, that'll be great. I think that'll be important for us to have a little team. And anyone else? Ross, were you indicating an interest in that maybe? He started blinking in my space. Okay. Does anyone know how to help Ross get back off mute? I don't know. I don't think it's anything internal.
Usually it's a problem with 2 mutes. You have your mute on your phone and then the mute in the system as well. So, but Ross says in the chat his days are full indeed in limited staff capacity. So, as you anticipated, Sue.
Okay. Well, let's keep moving. We did want to make time for public comment and then our final reflections, because our goal was actually to leave early to give ourselves a little more time. But I don't want to cut us short if there are things people want to say. But I want to right now, unless there's anything more people want to share about either our deliverable and timeline presentation, and we have the suggestion to add to that, our cross-pollination planning, or our public engagement liaisoning, anything else on any of those topics? And I so appreciate people's willingness to do more. And I think having a team to rely on for that is really great. So let's open it up to public comment. Do we have members of the public who would like to share with us today? Please speak up. Well, I am not seeing or hearing anything in the chat. Iris, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask why are all the public comment sections at the end? Because I think that it probably makes it harder for people to participate. So is there like a statutory reason that they're like that, or just can that be at all changed for any of these meetings? Just because I think that having to sit through a 2-hour meeting to get your voice heard is probably a barrier to some people, and we're losing voices there. Yeah, that's all.
I think that that's a great question, and I would be open to, as long as it didn't take too much time at the beginning, considering public comment. We have so much to do, and we're trying to get to know one another, so we always start out with that. But any other thoughts, Chris?
What we do with Vermont Nuclear Decommission Citizens Advisory Panel is after each section on the agenda, we actually have space for public comment. It's very focused, but that way people can respond to whatever had just been discussed. And Iris, one of the reasons why you have it so focused as opposed to just kind of constant engagement back and forth is otherwise it can make it hard for the council to have the conversation it has to have. If it's more of an open discussion, but that's just in case you're wondering why isn't it more just a free-flowing discussion. But we could certainly arrange for that too. I mean, as part of public participation, for maybe we would have some meetings dedicated to more of a free exchange of ideas with the public. But that's the purpose of the meeting, as opposed to the council having a discussion and trying to resolve issues.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, the way that some public bodies operate, though, is they have a section for public comment in the beginning that's not related to anything that's on the agenda, and then after each agenda item, they have an option for public comment. And I think that just like some other system of public engagement might yield more people coming to tell us what they think. Yeah, because I think that maybe the end of a 2-hour meeting is not necessarily the right way to be doing it. Yeah, that's all.
I think those are great suggestions, and I am open to integrating moments of public engagement around the topics that we're discussing. Frankly, I'm not sure I want to open the meeting with whatever people want to say, because we have really tight agendas that are hard to fit in and hard for us to feel like we can speak easily. So as much as I really appreciate your spirit of your comment, because we're a group that needs to move forward, I like the idea not of an open beginning, but certainly an opening at the end to whatever, but to allow for public input as topics proceed. What do others think?
I wonder if we could chew on this, you and Nadia and Kaya and myself, and maybe try something different next week, or bring back some specific suggestions, and we could dig into it a little bit more. I like the idea of trying something different, because what we're doing now doesn't feel like it's meeting the spirit of public comment in the way that we want.
I do think things will change when we have a public engagement process, so that people who are hungry to engage on money topics will really have that chance. And I'm not sure our meetings are a great chance for that. Kelly?
Briefly, I noticed at cross-sector mitigation that there were a few members of the public who jumped in when there was something of interest to them on the agenda. They weren't there for the full time, and then they waited till the end. And one of the people who jumped in didn't even comment at the end. I think she was just interested, but possibly having public comment after certain key portions of our agenda, and maybe not always having it in between things, maybe deciding based on what exactly is on the agenda and what might be of interest to the public would be a good consideration.
Great. And I so appreciate, Iris, you raising this important question. I think I'm thinking so much about how do we just get through an agenda that we're trying to pack a lot of information in. And I really appreciate your reminding, at least me, that we've got to give more room. It's hard in this particular virtual environment. So we got to put it on the agenda in some way. So Sarah suggested we cogitate and start something new. Any other comments about or any other reflections on anything you'd like to reflect on, especially about this meeting, and in particular the public comment part? Chris, that's a 3-hour meeting. All right.
Yeah, after a day of meeting, yeah, you just kind of want to hit yourself in the head with a board at the end. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've gotten through some important business in an hour and a half, and we also recognize that we're asking you to do a couple of meetings next week. I think it's going to be worth our while, and it'll help us really ground us in where we're supposed to be going and understanding. So thank you. And I think I saw, did you, David, write something about public comments that are that people are allowed to submit? I can't actually read the chat, so I know something came on. David, you're mute. I can see you trying to speak.
Sorry, Teams is killing me here. Yes, there's a link to the feedback form that Jane's gotten up on the website, and that'll get better too when we get the new website and the new consultants on board. But that will, if people direct things to you, it'll come into this committee, and you'll be able to see those, and we'll synthesize those, and they'll also some. So it's another asynchronous channel. I know that Sarah is desperate to get to her 5:30 meeting. She's the recorder, so she's got to go.
Oh, okay. I have another one to hop onto as well. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your evening. Spring will come, and ski if you can. Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you, Dave.